This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamitdoitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to two members of the House of Delegates from Henrico County, my county too. So delighted to have you here. In fact, my delegate, Jimmie Massie, and Delegate Dr. John O'Bannon, both members of the Medicaid Innovation and Reform Commission and also key members of the Appropriations Committee. So we want to start the conversation talking about where the budget process is and explaining the House perspective, your all's perspective on the Medicaid reform or expansion or Marketplace Virginia, whatever it might be called. We will remind our viewers at the beginning of the show that we're talking on March 31st, the day before Senate Finance Committee will be meeting on April 1, and so we have no idea what may come, if anything, from that meeting. But Dr. O'Bannon, 2001, Delegate Massie, 2008. So we'll defer to you to start, and then the two of you inform our viewers about the issue.
So David, you've been down here longer than I have. You've been down here a long time. I guess 2 or 3 times in my 14 years now, we have wound up not doing our job, which is basically to pass a budget and leave town. And this is not an off-season. There's not an existing budget come July 1. The Commonwealth will not have a budget if we don't pass one. And here we are. We've had this basic disagreement about expanding Medicaid in Virginia. And we actually debated this last year. And we made a decision last year that this was something that we were going to look at in a deliberative process. Both parties, both houses, agreed we needed to reform the Medicaid program because of its cost, and then look at options for expanding when we do that. And this year, unfortunately, some of the folks in the Senate and the governor have pushed very hard to try to make us do that, and they've done it in the context of our state budget. We certainly think that it's an important issue, but we think it's much more important that Virginia go on and pass a clean budget and then have this discussion about the process of expanding Medicaid and what that might look like in Virginia. As you say, it's been a moving target. So I think our position is very clear. We need to go ahead and get the budget passed, get this, what's become rather divisive issue, out of this discussion. We're holding up all of our localities, our universities. The teachers need contracts. The public safety folks need to know how many sheriffs they'll have. So we're pretty squared away that this right thing to do is get the budget passed and then have this important discussion.
Dr. Massie?
Yeah, thank you, David. I want to reemphasize what John said. I mean, we had a bipartisan agreement with the Democrats last year that this was Medicaid expansion was a huge decision. And so we gave that decision in a bipartisan vote to the Medicaid Innovation Reform Commission, the MERC, we call it, that John and I both serve on. And we said, okay, we created the MERC, we empowered the MERC, 5 of us from the House, 5 of us from the Senate in contact with our colleagues. That's where the Medicaid decisions should lie. This year, there's been a little bit of change of heart on the Democrats' part with the new governor. And as John said, we believe inappropriately, they have taken the budget a hostage. And they're said, we're going to hold up all the state of Virginia. We're threatening to shut down the state of Virginia on July the 1st if we do not expand Medicaid. And so we just feel like that's absolutely inappropriate. So where we are is, free the budget hostage, let the MERC work, and then possibly we have a special session sometime in the fall to discuss Medicaid expansion.
Help the viewers understand the MERC a bit more too, because and maybe give an update, if you will, on some of the issues that you all have wrestled with, and maybe we hear that some reforms are taking place. So where are we in that process?
Let's do that. So what we know about Medicaid, and as you know, Medicaid came in, it was envisioned in 1965 as a true safety net for low-income individuals and folks with illness that couldn't afford to pay for their health care. And what the Obamacare bill did was, as part of the 2 parts, the first was the exchanges, and I won't comment on those because we see how they're working, but the other part was a requirement that every state expand Medicaid to cover folks under 100% or 133% of what's called the federal poverty level. And the Supreme Court, this was the Supreme Court decision, said that is unconstitutional. The cost of the Medicaid program to the states is so high and potentially so dangerous to their state budgets that had to be a state choice. That states could make that decision. And basically half the states have expanded and half the states haven't. And Virginia, rather than just say no, last year said, we'll look at the program and the dollars on the program, and the costs of health care, as you know, are hard to project. But current Medicaid is 22% of the state budget. And of the new dollars in our new proposed budget, Medicaid before expansion is 40% of every new dollar. And so for that reason, we felt it was really important to put a process in place to reform Medicaid before we looked at that expansion option. So we have a very clear-cut 3-step process that includes taking what we call the dual eligibles, the folks that are on Medicare and Medicaid, have a chronic illness and they're old or blind or disabled or low income, and we're moving those into what's called a managed care plan, a plan where you see folks like the insurance companies do who have nurses who watch over them or folks who get involved in their care to help them. We have another set of folks that are long-term care folks. These are the folks in the nursing homes. It's a huge part of the Medicaid budget. And it's never had any kind of payment scheme except something that's sort of a look back and a per day type process. So that's a part of it. That is just beginning to get into place. We have no idea whether that's going to save money or not. But we have goals and we have hopes that it will. Then we have a huge set of folks who have disabilities, and they're on what's called waivers. And you're very familiar with that set of folks. You've been a big advocate for those folks. And we have been an advocate for those folks. But we've got to do better by that set of folks, and what we're trying to do is standardize those waivers so that they pretty much work effectively across that whole range. As you know, we have ID and DD and a whole variety of waivers which could be much more efficient. That process has not even started yet. So when somebody comes along and says, well, we've reformed Medicaid and we can take the new dollars, it gives me pause, because I really think we have the process. And when we see that the programs are more efficient, then I think we're in much better position. Other thing we've done, and Jimmie's sort of an expert on this, I might yield to him for this, but there are issues of fraud and waste in Medicaid.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the magnitude of the decision, Dave, and why we gave the decision. I think made a good decision last year to give this decision to the Medicaid Innovation Reform Commission. I mean, we already cover 1 million people in Virginia, 1 out of 8 Virginians. We spend $9-ish billion a year on Medicaid. Half of that's federal money, half of that's state money. It's the biggest program in the state. The expenses are rising at 8% a year when our revenues are rising at 4%. As John said, it's going to take 40% or about $600 million of all the new revenue. I'm sticking to the paper, said Massie misses the mark, but I'm sticking to my guns. There is 25 to 30% waste, fraud, and inefficiencies in our current system. So I don't think any reasonable person would say, hey, you know, that's working so well, let's just go ahead and expand that by 40%, you know, from 1 million people to 1.4 million. You know, the right thing to do is to reform it first. And we are just early in the stages of the reforms. So you want to be sure you got your existing business ready before you expand it. The Medicaid Innovation Reform Commission, I think, only started meeting last June. We've met 3 or 4 times. We're trying to schedule one for next month. So just given the magnitude of it, the right thing to do is to reform the current system, look at what's going on around the country, and make a circumspect decision sometime, and let the MERC work, and then maybe come back and have a special session at some point in the future, maybe in the fall.
Are your perspectives the same with regards to Senator Watkins? I call it his proposal on the Marketplace, Virginia, because I hear you loud and clear from your perspective on the
Sure.
on pure Medicaid expansion. How do you comment some on the Marketplace?
It's one of the things we certainly would like to look at in some detail. I will tell you this, we do feel like the hospitals need help. I've worked in hospitals all my life. I will tell you the budget we put together clearly acknowledged the needs of the hospitals. We doubled the funding to the free clinics. Virginia has a marvelous set of free clinics that do deliver care to all these folks. And to folks who would not get picked up by Medicaid expansion. There'll always be folks that are going to need a safety net. We also fully restored the Medicaid inflation funding to the hospitals. We fully restored the indigent care funding. So we are aware that the hospitals do deliver care that's uncompensated, and we have a plan to deal with that. The Marketplace plan is interesting because it's sort of a blend, if you will. And what's interesting about it is that there have been probably 3 states or 4 states that have tried to thread that needle, if you will, in the context of trying to make a deal, if you will, with CMS. And we're looking at those states. We've looked at some of those states. Arkansas, which is probably the closest to what's been proposed. Iowa did something. Michigan did something. Unfortunately, what you find is when this is a federal program, and they're still federal dollars. And so what happened in Arkansas was that it's a little different, it's a different state, but they found that the federal government put some encumbrances on those plans, which made it harder. I mean, when we expand a program like this and we put new folks on, you have an obligation, I think, to those folks. It's not exactly like private insurance. The HMO industry every day sort of, kicks people off. They don't have the coverage. And I think when you're dealing with a safety net set of folks, that's a harder decision, harder obligation for us. And one of our biggest challenges has been how in the world do we deal with this in the out years? We're seeing projections. The numbers have changed 3 times on what this would. Started out costing us money, and then again it was sort of neutral. Now it's saving us money. And so I think predicting going forward is also real hard.
Yeah, my perspective on Marketplace Virginia is, again, that's why we all need to let the MERC work. I've said on the House floor, I would rather be a good imitator than a risky originator. So let's watch what all the other states are doing. And in the next Medicaid, the next MERC Commission meeting, that's one of the things we're doing. We're going to look at what the other states are doing. But David, I would tell you a not well-known fact is that we sort of have a Marketplace Virginia in place now because the expansion population in Obamacare for Medicaid was 100 to 138, 133, okay? If we don't expand, those people today are eligible for the federal exchange today. So they can take the federal dollars, buy themselves a silver plan. They're only out of pocket every month 2 or 3% of their income, $30 plus or minus $10 a month. They can buy a silver plan that has a 97% actuarial value. So, this is not, and we think the other thing that talks to, one of the Democrats' main selling points, and the governor says, well, we're sending $5 million a day to Virginia, to the federal government under the Obamacare taxes. They call it $2 billion a year. It's really $1.8 billion. And we're not going to get any of that money back if we don't expand. That's just not true. because of those population from 100 to 138 today can go on the federal exchanges. Our staff upstairs thinks that number is 750 plus or minus $250 million a year, might be even higher. I've seen higher estimates. The Hospital Association came to the Appropriations Committee, made a presentation, and they said in their presentation no money would be coming back. When I confronted them on it, they came to my office not too long afterwards and said, well, in fact, you're right, that 100 to 138. So that expansion population is eligible for the federal exchange to buy private health insurance with subsidies right now. And so that, it may well be an answer, to the marketplace, Virginia.
So where's it going? Where's this going to end up? As you said, I have been here longer, but most of the times where it's run into the jam have been during the last 12, 13 years.
Well, I will tell you this, and my wife is in local government, and my county, Henrico County, is already, if you will, marked up its budget. It's had its budget hearings, and you probably do know this, but at least one of these rating agencies, the bond rating agencies, 20% of their determination about whether you get your AAA rating or not rides with your budgeting. So I'm real concerned that the governor and the folks in the Senate are putting our bond rating at some risk by dragging this out. I think they'll see that, and I think at the end of the day, the right thing to do is a simple thing, is to just decouple this from the middle of the budget. Let's deal with this. We dealt with this last year in transportation. I had the privilege of being a transportation conferee. We had a separate freestanding bill. We debated it. We made it better. We negotiated it. And then everybody voted for it, for that specific thing. That's the right way to do this. We need to decouple this from the budget. We need to have the discussion. I've got some ideas on health care. I like what Oregon's doing, because they've really been in the cost curve. I like the idea of the audit of Medicaid. And I think that audit would help us in making this decision. So the path forward I see is very simple. We just go ahead and decouple this from the budget. We pass our budget, and then we deal with this important issue separately.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with John. It's just absolutely inappropriate to take the budget of Virginia hostage to get a public policy objective that I want. It sets a terrible precedent for the future too. Because what's happened, John and I like school choice. Charter schools, vouchers. So why wouldn't we next year take the budget hostage and say, okay, if we don't get our way on some public policy issue that's really meaningful to us, we're not going to pass the budget. So it's just absolutely inappropriate. So again, the right thing to do is to free the budget hostage, let the Medicaid Innovation and Reform Commission, let the MERC work, and then possibly come back for a special session sometime in the fall. And I think John's right. At the end of the day, we're rock solid in the House. On those issues, we are rock solid in the House. And I just don't think it's going to be productive for the Democrats to shut the state of Virginia down on July the 1st to get Obamacare Medicaid expansion in the state of Virginia. We just don't think it's going to happen. If they want to go there, we'll see them there.
Yeah, I have no crystal ball, but I tell friends that I feel sure there will be a budget before the deadline.
I think we can get there.
How close to the deadline, the crystal ball gets very cloudy.
Yeah. The sad thing is the budget's done. John will tell you, John and the conferees could meet for another morning. The budget's 1/10 of 1% apart. It's done. They just don't want to close that last little gap because they don't want to admit it's done. So John and the conferees could agree on a budget in the morning, right, John?
And I think the other thing is we've got a very good budget. We've got resources for sheriffs, for deputies. We've got resources for higher ed to hold tuitions down and get Virginia slots like everybody wants. We've got resources for raises for teachers and for state employees. And we've got good funding for the healthcare system in the current budget the House has proposed. So I think we could get together on the pieces of that and get that job done very quickly and then have this discussion.
Now the budget that you passed last week, am I correct in understanding that it includes many of the matters that had been agreed upon, somewhat unofficially agreed upon by the conferees, so it's a little different than the budget that you passed back in February?
Well, David, your point is well taken. This is an interesting learning curve for a lot of us, but the way the budget process works, because we finished our regular session without a budget, and this is inside baseball, but when we adjourn without a budget, the budget bill basically died. But we had been negotiating with the Senate on a variety of the contentious disagreements. I won't say the word contentious. Disagreements between the two houses. So a proportion of those had already been agreed upon. Those were incorporated into the budget that's been proposed and passed by the House and sent over to the Senate. So you're right, the ball's further down the field. We're much closer than we were.
So back to your point, then there's far less to be worked out between the two chambers.
Just 0.1% of the overall dollars are in dispute. The conferees could work that out in 2 or 3 hours, and and we've given them concrete proposals to work those differences out. The Democrats have not responded to them because they don't want to get to a position where they say, "Oh, the budget's done," so now they're holding a done budget in hostage. They'd rather hold an undone budget in hostage rather than a done budget in hostage. So that's what they're doing. Again, we're just not going to, free the budget hostage, let the MERC work, and have a special session in the future, possibly in the fall.
In our closing few minutes, are there other issues that, from the 2014 session that you'd want to comment on, or any of those that you see as going forward to the next regular session next January that you'll still be working on?
Well, I will tell you that I was very proud of how we did a couple of things. I was very proud. It's not perfect, but both sides got together and we really did work hard on mental health reform. And I can tell you that the changes, that they cost money. It's time to do that. But this whole process where we deal with folks who are unstable, we chose to do a couple of things. There are things called drop-off centers. We have one in Enrico, where you have a secure place. The public safety folks love it because they don't have to sit with the patient in the ordinary hospital emergency room. There's a social worker there who's what you really need to help, and a mental health worker. So we added more drop-off centers. The other end of that is what's called PAC teams. These are the sort of like hospitals without walls. This is the multidisciplinary folks that make sure they call the people, they go watch them take their pills every day. They keep them on a good treatment program so they don't get unstable.
And a couple other things. We had a really productive session that just kind of got overshadowed by the budget and the Medicaid debate right at the end. But we also did some significant SOL reform. I went from 23 SOLs, I think, down to 17. We did some ethics reform. I think that will improve. I think we have a good ethics climate, I think, in the state of Virginia, but it always can be improved. So I think between mental health reform, SOL reform, and ethics reform, I mean, we had a really productive session that will improve the lives of everyday Virginians. Some of those messages didn't get out because of the budget and the Medicaid, dispute. So I think we had a very good session that it will help a lot of people in the state of Virginia.
And I would remind everybody that those were actually bipartisan.
Yes, they were.
And bicameral.
They were. And again, I'll remind them that we're talking on March 31st, and April 7th, a week, midnight on the 7th, is the deadline I think the governor has to act on this legislation that's there.
Right.
Much of it I think he's already signed. There's still a significant number of bills that typically go up near that deadline. And then beyond the time of the special session, remind the viewers that you're back then on April 23rd for a time to consider any action the governor's taken, either vetoes, which I think there's one bill that's been vetoed, and I think only one so far, and then any amendments that the governor would ask you to consider in the two chambers. So there's still maybe some work to do on some of those matters, but it certainly was a very significant session on mental health, as you're saying, and on other issues too. And so 2015, what's going to be big then? It won't be a budget year.
Well, as you know, we'll deal with the caboose budget, and the nice thing about getting a budget this July is that the state actually could run on that budget all the way through. Right. The economy and jobs, I mean, we're still not where we want to be. We're doing a little better, but we're seeing a lot of folks. We're dealing with ramifications of folks going out of the workforce. Workforce is a big issue for us. We've planned to try to coordinate. Everybody loves the halo of workforce, but it's in lots of places. It's in the community colleges and higher ed and K through 12 and economic development. So that's an opportunity for us because there's a lot of money there and a lot of different streams. And So we'll be focusing on that.
Time's out. We'll have to have the two of you back again together individually, but appreciate your being on This Week in Richmond and laying out the issues, the people that must be dealt with before the budget's passed. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, Dave.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamitdoitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.